Hey guys, sorry about that. Got a couple mentions in the chat already. I did not realize that I was that you guys were waiting. So I was gonna start at 8. I'm starting a little early since I saw these messages. Pierce and Tracy, hey, how are you guys doing? Um, so we're gonna so I had a request actually from Tracy to talk about because we're gonna go over the 5 chord today, and we might spread this out into 2 weeks, but we're gonna be talking about diminished chords. So how to use diminish over the 5 chord, how to understand it. We might we might talk about some patterns or some diminished type of patterns or licks. I don't know if we'll get into that this week, but we will get into what is a diminished chord, how to use it over the 5 chord, what's the diminished scale, how to think about it, or how I think about it, and maybe how I can help you think about it and understand it. So I hope you are all ready because honestly, diminished can be kind of a little bit challenging and confusing. I've struggled with diminished stuff, and in the past, and really took me a long time to really wrap my head around it. So I think I found a way that I fully understand it, and hopefully that my way of learning it maybe can help you also fully understand it. So here we go. Alrighty. So um, let's talk about just the diminished scale in itself. So what is, excuse me, the diminished chord. So what is a diminished chord? How do we build it? And then we'll talk about where it comes from. So a diminished chord, and we talked about this a few weeks ago with augmented, how to build augmented triad, and really the augmented triad stacking major thirds. Well, the diminished chord is stacking minor thirds. So I'm going to be speaking in C a lot of this time. I'll be referencing C. So when you hear me talk about the C7 or whatever I'm talking about, it's going to be in C, and I'll be playing C on tenor as well, just for future reference for the rest of this video. So let's build a fully diminished, not a diminished triad. We're going to build a fully diminished chord, or a diminished 7th chord. It can be called a bunch of different things and notated a bunch of different ways, but fully diminished, diminished 7th chord, those are two most common. And so here's it from C. So it looks like this, or sounds like this. So I'm stacking minor thirds, and what that is I'm playing C, then E flat, then F sharp or G flat, and then A, which would technically be B double flat if we're being super proper here, but let's not worry about that. So we're playing C, E flat, F sharp, and A, and I'm stacking those minor thirds. So how does that like work over a chord, and how does that get built? So let's talk about the diminished scale, and then some things might clear up a little bit. Now you have two diminished scales. You have a whole half diminished, and you have a half whole diminished. And what that means, the half whole and whole half, is basically the interval between the first and second note, and then that pattern repeats throughout. Now I wrote something down, and I'll play it for you after I show you what I wrote. So we're going to be talking about the half whole diminished, and hopefully you can see this pretty good. So this is the half whole diminished C diminished scale, and it also is the 3 other scales that I'll show you in a second. So basically, C, D flat, E, F sharp, G, A, and then B flat, and then we're back to C. So this is, and then underneath you see what I wrote here: half whole, half whole. I'm trying to look through the camera into the screen, so I apologize if I'm a little off. So it's half whole, half whole, half whole, half, and it goes. And then once you get to B flat, you're back to C, and this is a completely symmetrical scale, meaning that it follows this pattern perfectly, and you can go on forever, and it will follow this pattern. It never changes. And C half whole diminished is also the same as these other 3. So E flat, F sharp, and A, they're all related. All 3 of them have the same exact notes in it, and I'll play that for you in a second. All of them have the same exact notes. So let me play C half whole diminished for you. All right. Now I'm going to play E flat half whole diminished. All right. F sharp. A. All of them are the same notes. And they just start on different starting points. So C, E flat, F sharp, and A are all the same diminished scales. And the great thing about that is that there's 4, right? So we only have 8 left. But if you play it from D flat or C sharp, you have 4 more. And then if you play it from D, you get the other 4. So you only really need to learn 3 diminished scales. Each of them each of them make sure they're half steps away. So if you start on C, you got to play, C, C sharp, and D, or B, C, and C sharp, however you want to do it. And then they basically repeat themselves from there. Now, how does that relate to the dominant chord? Now we're getting into like what the meat of this is, how to use this over a dominant, right? How does this work over dominant seventh chords? Because this sound is commonly heard over dominant seventh chords, this half whole diminished sound, but getting a hold of it and understanding how to use it is a whole nother story. So here's the way that I think about it a little bit. I don't know if it's a shortcut. I don't know if it's just the way that my brain works, but let me give you let me let me give you the idea of what I'm thinking and how I thought of it and how I figured it out, and then kind of go into what you can do with that. So what I like to do is I like to build a diminished sound off of the third of a 5 chord. Okay, let me explain that. So if we have C7, the third of C7 is E, right? Okay, and so you start on E, and then you're gonna build from there. You're gonna go 3, 5, 7. So we're on the seventh chord, so or we're on the dominant chord, so it's a flat 7. So 3, 5, flat 7, and then flat 9. So we have the E, then we're going up to the 5, which is a G. We're going up to the 7, which is B flat, right? We're on C7. And then we're going up to the flat 9. Now the flat 9 is D flat or C sharp. However you want to think of it. And here's the sound you get. Right? Sound familiar? Yeah, that's the diminished seventh chord. So you're building it off the 3 and 3, 5, 7, flat 9, or 3, 5, flat 7, flat 9. And then you can resolve it from there into the 1 chord. Now, if we were just playing quarter notes, we would play that. We could go 3, 5, flat 7, flat 9, and then resolve. And so what I want to show you here is how each of these notes resolve. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a trick from Barry Harris, or other people, but I know Barry Harris made this very, very popular. And I had a discussion last week with someone on here about the way Barry Harris, talks about major bebop scales and how he relates it to diminished. That's a whole nother thing. And like I said, he will teach that infinitely better than me. Even if I work on it for the rest of my life, he is just a master and he's created that. So this is the way that I'm kind of explaining it and thinking of it. So I'm going to resolve to the 1, 3, 5, or 6 of the major chord. So it's like I'm playing a C7 to an F major 6 chord. And so let me resolve each one. And this is a great way for you to practice and hear the resolutions. So I'll resolve the first one. I'm going to play what I just played from the 3 of the C7. So starting on E. And I resolve to the C, which is the 5 of F. Okay, now I'm going to start from the 5 of the C7 chord. So G. I just resolved to the 6 of the F chord, this which is D, okay? And that's an that's one of those sounds that you got to get used to hearing landing on the 6 of a major chord. It's a really cool sound, but it also takes a minute for your ears to get used to it. Um, Now I'm going to start from the flat 7 of the C7. So I'm starting from B flat, playing that diminished chord up and then resolving. So that time I resolved directly to the F, which is the 1 of the, you know, of the F major. Now I'm going to start from the flat 9. All right. And now I resolve to the 3 of that F chord, which is A. And this is the bare minimum that you want to start understanding is how to build the diminished chord off of the 5/7 chord, off of the dominant chord, and how to resolve it. And then you can get into all types of language that you can put into it. Like I'm sure you guys have all heard something like this. Uh, right, something like that. Sorry. Right. You've heard something along those lines. You've heard something like this. Right, you've heard that type of pattern. All of that stuff comes from the diminished scale slash chord, um, and that diminished sound. But it's all about tapping into how to understand it and how to use it and also how to hear it. And so for me, the easiest thing was find the third of that 5/7 chord. Now let's try another 5/7 chord, right? Let's just pick G. All right, so we find the third of it, which is B, right? Now let's build a diminished seventh chord off of that B. So we have B, D, F, and then A flat. Right? So now I have that sound. All right? That's the diminished seventh. Now that's 3, 5, flat 7, flat 9. And I just resolved it down to the 3 of the one chord, which is E, and the one chord is C because we're going G7 to C. So, any questions so far? I know I'm just talking. It's been 13 minutes and I hope this is making sense. If it's not, please please put something in the chat where you're like, "Well, Chris, explain this better or more or break this down a little bit cleaner." I'm trying to take this intentionally slow because this I've like read through this stuff. I've looked at it on, written it out. I've watched some, learned it from teachers, and so it takes a while for this to click because it is something new and it is a different sound, right? Than just your than certain sounds that you're used to hearing. Getting that diminished sound in your ear can take a while. Um, okay, cool. No questions so far. So far, so good. All right, getting good feedback. So this is probably the most awesome part of this whole thing, and I've alluded to it earlier. Um, Now we talked about C7. We did talk about G7 just for a second there, but back to C7. Now, in spellability on the third, remember the roots of the dominant seventh chord from the diminished chord half step below. Yeah, you can do that too. Pierce writes something in the chat if you want to check that out. I mean, you can do that too. Like if you want to build a scale, you just start on the root. You can start and do the half whole from that. So, right, you can totally just start on the root and play that half whole diminished scale and you have the scale there at I'm just trying to talk about how to tap into the diminished chord itself, but yeah, whatever way, honestly, it doesn't matter if you get it from me right here, right now, whatever makes it click for you, that's the way you want to use it. There's a lot of ways to approach this, a lot of ways to understand it. This is just one way. It might not be the way that you totally dig it. But what I was going back to is I alluded to, um, you know, this is going to work over what we just talked about with C7. It's going to work over E flat 7, it's going to work over F sharp 7, and it's going to work over A7. All of these things, they're all going to work. And you know what's crazy about this, what I think is crazy about it is that they share, they share the same scale. They share a lot of the same uh chord tones that we're using, right? So C and F sharp both share a 3 and a 7, right? They're a tritone apart. They share the E and the B flat, or the A sharp if you're thinking of it as F sharp. So um, B flat slash A sharp. B flat is the seventh of C7. A sharp is the third of F sharp 7, and then E is the third of C7, and E is the seventh flat 7 of F sharp 7. And then if you do the opposites, like if you do A and E flat, you get the same thing there. Um, and then if you start really diving into thinking about this, you can say, oh, okay, well, the the third of A is the flat 7, or excuse me, the third of A is the flat 9 of C, right? The fifth of F sharp, C sharp, is also the flat 9 of C, and the fifth of F sharp, again, C sharp, is the third of A, right? So all of these are interconnected. We can literally draw like one of those crazy, spider webs of things that I think the FBI or CIA uses to like link all these people together. You could do that with Diminish, and like so many things are intertwined. You can make it look like a crazy spider web. We'd have strings all over the room. It'd be insane. Um, but knowing that these are all related can really help you, um, can really help you with finding new sounds in your playing, right? So if I'm doing uh, if I'm doing like a C7, right, and I'm resolving to 1, which is F, now I have a bunch of other sounds I can think of. I can say, oh, okay, well, what if I wanted to play F sharp 7 instead of C7? Now I have a bunch of ideas, and that's a tritone sub, by the way. But what if I wanted to play E flat 7 instead of C7? Now I can play E flat 7 ideas and resolve to F. That's called a backdoor 2/5, or a backdoor 5 chord. Or I can play A7 and then resolve to F. Now that one's the trickiest one to hear and resolve to. Maybe not necessarily resolve to, but it's the trickiest one to hear. I don't know if that one has a special name, like the tritone sub and the backdoor. If it does, and someone knows the name of it, please feel free to put it in the chat. But that gives you a ton of different options. And maybe since this one's going pretty long already, maybe next week we talk about how to use that. Um, Does this also relate to subtonics? Bodhi asks, what do you mean by subtonics? What is? I don't know if I know what I'm like I said, I'm not a music major or anything. So I don't know what subtonics means. If you could tell me what that means, or maybe I do know what it means. I just call it something different. Um, but we'll wait for that. So, anyways, that's one of the great things about learning this just in just one scale. It's like you've gotten four different scales down all in one, right? And then you also have all these different ways to tap into ideas and creativity in your playing. Like if you ever feel like, oh, I'm sick of resolving C7 to F, like how can I explore more sounds? Well, you have three other dominant chords you can substitute in now and figure out how to make that sound good, which is pretty awesome. I mean, I think is awesome. So uh, let me see, what else do I want to touch on today? So just a reminder, we went over the fully diminished seventh chord, right? How to build it. We're building up minor thirds. We talked about the whole half and half whole, but we just really focused on the half whole. half whole diminished, which is here. And then the 4 chords that relate, we have 4 chords that will always relate to one another. Um, and then we also talked about, like, really there's only 3 diminished scales and 3 diminished, centers that you really need to learn, because once you learn the 3 of them, you have all 12 keys, um, down. So Bodhi writes, I'm not too sure, I'm still young, but I think it's like substituting F major 7 for like an A Phrygian sound. Um, yeah, that might be for like like a different day. Because I mean there's a lot there to unpack. I know you can do all types of subs. I don't know them all. I'm not claiming to. There's all types of sounds. I mean, at the end of the day, honestly, if you're the way you're creating music, and the way that you're improvising and the way that you're understanding music, if it's how you want to express yourself, I don't see that it could be wrong, right? I mean, Jacob Collier is a perfect example of that, and I think he speaks a lot to this, where he follows where his ear goes, and maybe he doesn't always follow all the rules, but all these rules are meant to be broken. I've said it before on here. Miles Davis has said there's no wrong notes. So you know the any way that you're thinking of it, I mean, we want to get away from thinking, right? When we're improvising, we want to do all the thinking in this space, right? This practice room that we have. But you want to, when you're improvising and you're really getting and connecting with the other musicians that you're playing with, the main thing is to not be thinking, right? To just allow yourself to be free. Pierce writes, you can think of A7 over C by thinking 5 of F's relative minor D. Yeah, before resolving to F major. Totally. You can think of that. Um, that's a perfect way a way to think of it. Like I said, however it makes it click for you, that's what you want to do. So, um, you know, I just think of those major key centers, like, right? So if I'm thinking of C7, I know I have E flat 7, F sharp 7, and A7 to my advantage. And if I play something, and I've written a couple of 2/5s actually that I've already put out in the shorts, that kind of express this idea, where I'm trying to play like, oh, okay, I'm gonna purposefully play A7 over C7, to get this sound out of it, because I'm really not, like, let's break that down real quick. If I'm playing C7 and I play A7 over C7, right? So I'm going to just use chord tones here. So if I play, right, that's 1 3 5 7 A7. So it's A, C sharp, E, G. Now we're getting pretty much almost all chord tones, or we're getting some chord tones of C7, right? We're playing E and G, which is 3 and 5. I'm playing A, which is the 13 of C. And then which is also a really nice sound. I like that sound. And then I'm playing the C sharp, which is the flat 9. So, I mean, now I resolved it to F. That boo boo ba, that was just to F. Um, so you're not going too far outside the box there. You're just using upper structure chord tones like the 13 and the flat 9, and you're still using, the 3 and the 5. If and even if you were to play even more stuff, from A7, if you're playing the F sharp, right? That's a sharp 11, right? That's a cool sound. So, you know, it like I said, it's not too far out. You just need to really spend some time on it, and spend some time really. Um, what I do is I spend a lot of time in that key center, maybe A7, and then I think about how to resolve it. So I might think of all the things I do with A7. So I'll just play here for a minute, and this isn't pre-thought out. This is me just playing around. So if I make mistakes, whatever. This is a practice room. It's where it happens. So if I'm doing something like A7 stuff, resolve there. So it's not, it's just an easy. So let me see here. Uh, uh, so I'm just trying to find different ways on how to ease into that F. And this is, like I said, this one's the hardest one in my opinion. Um, but this is the exploration part, right? I could just kind of keep it simple, and instead of trying to play bebop stuff for you guys and not have it sound exactly how I want, I could just play something like, all right, let me just stick to chord tones. Uh, right. That's kind of thinking like resolving to like what Pierce said. I'm almost thinking like I'm resolving to that D minor, which does help, right? And then try to make it sound, try to bring it back to the major if that's what you want to sound. Or if you land on the D, you're just landing on the 6, which is also really hip. Um, okay, this went really long. I usually don't do them this long. Any feedback? Any, I just, like I said, I don't like play stuff for you guys. I really try to think about this and make it a lesson. And then if we go somewhere else, it's not pre-planned. So you saw me just, yeah, play some stuff that, yeah, I'll probably need to work out. Like I'm like, I need to work that out for sure. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. A lot of stuff that needs to be worked out. So if there's no questions, I think what we'll do next week is we'll talk about, I'll shed that stuff and we'll talk about how to take these different sounds of the diminished, and maybe we'll talk about different types of diminished lines or patterns that you can play. Yeah, now comes the application, right, Tracy? Yeah, and it takes a while. Like I clearly don't have it all down. There's certain things I have down really, really well with diminished stuff. There's some stuff I don't. Like trying to resolve A7 to F major, that's not something that I hear very well. And I just tried to do it for you guys. It was okay, but it wasn't like, it wasn't killing, right? So it's something I need to work on. It's great. I mean, that's what this is all about. So start thinking about resolving into that major chord, hitting 1, 3, 5, and 6 of the major. Resolve that. Remember this whole thing. Right. So do that. Try that with every key and resolve into it. That'll really help get your ears around this stuff. But try. I would stay on like maybe one diminished scale, one diminished chord a day, just so you're not like confusing yourself, because this stuff can get really, really confusing. Um, so get in the shed, have fun, of course, work it out. If you need to write it out to see it, do that. However you learn best, We'll be back next week. We'll talk more about diminished stuff. We'll do some patterns for sure next week. Some really simple patterns. If you want to shed some patterns, listen to Train. Playing over a moment's notice. I think there's a pretty famous one in there. And listen to, Oscar Peterson plays a lot of it. Everyone. I mean, everyone that's worth listening to is playing all that stuff really, really, and just working it in so seamlessly. So I'm glad this was helpful, Tracy. Thanks for the suggestion. I'm glad we dug into this a bit, and this was fun. And we'll, like I said, next week we'll do a little bit more diminished stuff. And then if you have questions in the meantime, please send me a DM on Instagram at Chris G Sachs, or send me an email. Your guys' questions helps fuel this stuff, which is awesome, and I appreciate it because it helps me think less, I guess. And I can just really focus on what you guys want versus, what I'm coming up with, which, hopefully is also stuff you guys want. But, if it comes directly from you, that's even better. So, uh, I'll let you go on that note. And it's been 30 minutes. Wow. All right. Just remember, always positive, always progressing. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you, and I will see you later. Take care.